welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out to our town hall for our notice of public hearing regarding the budget. So at this time, I'm going to read the notice to the town of Plainfield. Notice of public hearing, Plainfield Town Hall, May 3rd, 2021. In accordance with the town charter requirements, the Board of Finance will hold a public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22 at 7 p.m. Monday, May 3rd, 2021 in the Plainfield Town Hall. All electors of the town and eligible property owners who wish to be heard will be allowed to do so at the hearing. Representing the Board of Finance, myself, Tom Sinkowitz, the chair. So at this time, what we will do is open the floor for the public hearing. Just a couple items to keep in mind. When you are being recognized, please stand up, make sure you speak up so that way everyone up here can hear you, and also tell us your name and your street address here in town. Sorry? We can do that. The other thing is, please keep in mind too that there are of course other people in the room. We don't just have one person in the audience. So when you're speaking, keeping in mind on time, we want to make sure everyone here who has something to say or ask is given the opportunity. So try to keep it, very, short and sweet to the point, and that way we can move on to certainly other people. So before I start and recognize the first person, if we could all please rise for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so at this time, the floor is open.
Virginia Sampietro, 29 Highland Street in Moosup. I was kind of...
Sorry, Virginia. When you're speaking, you might want to
Oh,
remove
okay.
your matches.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
good.
much
Yeah.
better. I was just hoping that, I mean, I know that there's no tax increase, which I think is wonderful as a resident. I was just hoping you might highlight some of the, if there are different changes where you put money, more money where there wasn't, or so just to get a sense of if there, even though there's no tax increase, are there kind of changes to the budget?
All right, and as you can see, we have up here not only the Board of Finance, we also have the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. So what we can do is we'll start with Board of Education, obviously for their budget, being that they're the ones who crafted it, presented it, and then same thing with the town side and the Board of Selectmen. So.
I'm going to defer to Ken because he's much louder than me without money.
So I appreciate the question. For the public, understand that the budget is fairly flat. It's been a $35.9 million budget for the last 3 years, and it's about $41,000. And I know you're not asking because it is a pretty flat budget. So what happened and how we're able to keep it flat this year is we are using what's called a special ed excess aid, which when we have excess numbers of children who need specific costs, we recover about 60 to 80% of those funds. So we have a category now that we use, so instead of going to the taxpayer, that's basically an offset cost. So that's one of the things that kept the cost flat. Second thing is that last year, because of COVID, we were able to save $540,000, and in fact, the auditors felt that we actually had $640,000. So last year, with the Selectmen recommendation and the Board of Finance, they put those dollars into a 2% set aside. And that means that that should be used for one-time costs. You don't pay for things that would be a structural deficit. So we did all the technology costs, we put it against that. Again, saving the responsibility. We don't have to go to the taxpayers because that money was given to us in the past by the taxpayers. It was not used last year, so it's in a set aside, and that helped us keep costs down. The last piece is not a savings, but what it is the fact that because so many children had to go on remote this past year, we know that we're going to have to recover those children. Like, we can't have classes of 24 next year. We have children who've been out 30, 40, 50 days. So they gave us $1.5 million that you spend over 2 years. So we put $700,000 in that line, and they're only one-time things. Like at Memorial School, if by putting an extra 4th grade and an extra 5th grade teacher for 1 year, that will allow those class sizes to come down to 18, 19, and we can help work with those children to get them back on track. So the first thing I want everybody to know is we're using grants and set-asides to basically not have to put a burden on the taxpayer. And the other one that's very significant that you would not know is there are as many as 12 retirees this year. The difference in 12 retirees is for a person who leaves at 85,000 coming in at 45 is about 30 to 35,000 savings, and we credited all that in this. So we've used all those savings to basically pay for the things that are needed. Everything a child needs is in here. Curriculum is sustained, technology is sustained, and some of those long-awaited things that people are hearing about, like we need to get the asbestos completely out of Moosup, that's in the budget in the 2% set aside. The track at the high school needs about $75,000 for just a resurfacing, may need work in 5 years. That's in the set aside. So we're doing everything the children need. We're using grants, and we have 12 retirees that help us save about $300,000.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Kevin?
Okay, let's see if I can get some specifics to what we've been modifying. If you'll notice in our page 3 it is, I'll start there. You'll notice that every single department has a change in it's called computer software and hardware. Those areas have been moved out of a singular line item, and now we're going into each department. So it makes it easier access to track where the upgrades are for the computers, for software and hardware. So that's one of them you'll see. If you get to the buildings and grounds, there's electricity that we this year didn't use much of because we were heating the pool and therefore didn't need to have that access. So we anticipated the savings there, and also moved some of that to electricity funding over to the actual recreation department. So that's been modified to reflect that. The other thing you notice that in the highway department on page 4, it says mechanic for police department. It is the same position that was listed in the police department. It's just that he's in the contract for the highway department. So it's easier to track if he's actually part of the highway. You'll notice the fire marshal has been an increase. We have a retired fire marshal, and we had to look at a best practice way to hire somebody in. Comparing towns around us, that's still lower than some of the other towns around us, but we anticipated getting $60,000, and we have hired somebody in that position. So you also associated information I mentioned before about other salaries, 3 part-time, 6 part-time in the police department. That was again part of that, taking that one employee's salary line item from police moving over to highway. On page 5, you'll notice the changes there for department head. It's an increase because there was a contractual increase for the salary, and it was a little low this year. We've already asked a lot of transfers to cover that this year, so that is the number that we're looking at, the 71,000 for that position. The recreation director is working on a program which he can actually charge certain monies for some of those things that we're doing in recreation. So that's why you'll see a decrease over the swimming pool and lifeguards for the offset costs. He can run and manage this program. We want to do a lot more with the engineering firm. If you notice on the 5-year capital, there are a plethora of items that are in there for the Kennebunk River Trail, the Oregon sidewalk construction, Moosup River frontage, Laser Road sidewalk construction, Oregon sidewalk construction, Dow Road Bridge, and there's a cemetery road water runoff issue we have. So those are issues where you need to have work being listed here, so in case you go for a grant, it's here and it's available. I did just receive a call today from Joe Courtney talking about the Kennebunk River Trail, the application that we put in for the grant. Of all the 63 that came in from our region, that one actually rose to the top, so he thinks there's a good chance we might be able to get that, or at least be in line. So, back over to general town, that's why the engineering was an increase there. And you'll notice the contingency number. The contingency number shows you from 50,000 to 117,815. That is there because we're still in contract negotiations, and we will be in negotiations with police, highway, and I think those are the 2 that are there. Also, the current one for the supervisors. So we put the money in contingency to offset that, so when they come to fruition, that's what we anticipate. And then if you go over to the other sections, well, what do we add? Most of the things we add will really continue on with the cycle of making sure that we are using from the fund balance some monies to help with some of the offsets. So like if we were looking at the HVAC wall systems that we looked to do for this building, mainly this hall area, and then the following year for the rest of the building, getting a new and used truck for buildings and grounds because they're in desperate need for those two, and continuation for the highway and Mason truck and a couple of other trucks. That's the basic changes. Yeah, you'll definitely notice in the general section there, that, I think it was page 6 or 7. 6. Yeah, the general town items, there's a lot of things underneath there that have gone away because obviously they one-time purchases. Like if you look at the herbicide for the pond, that's a one-time use. So those things all went away at the bottom.
Okay, thank you. You're all set? All right. Very good. Anyone else?
I had a whole bunch, but I figured I could try to let somebody else go before I do, just so, I didn't want to overlap any comments.
All right, or you can ask one and then we can go back to it afterward.
Okay, sure. I'll go ahead then. The first thing that popped out, and I want to make sure
Just real quick, can you just say your name and
Oh, sure. Dan Reel, 20 Doherty Ave. The first thing that popped out was the fact that we are giving a whole bunch of raises out. We have new positions that, quite frankly, I think we can all agree do not actually serve a purpose and function that we need right now. The reason I say that, and I say it strongly, and I think it does borderline on impulse spending, and maybe it seems frivolous in a way, because we just went through this whole COVID-19 thing where everything got shut down. My part, my end of it, I'm out at least 50 grand over it. I know I'm not alone in this respect. Some people have lost everything. And yet, in that scenario where people have lost everything, and we don't know what the future is going to bring, we have hired a grant writer, we have hired a recreation director when we've actually wrapped playground equipment with caution tape. We have done this when there is no possible productive benefit or effect. And we, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't know whether we're going to be able to keep them on the payroll. So, right at first blush, I would say, look, we got to have a philosophical discussion where we say, what is it that the town government does, and what is it that the town government does not do? And we should not do those things. To note some mismatched priorities here, we had, I guess there was some line item transfer, things going on about abating lead paint on the tank out front. And yet, we've all acknowledged here that we've had asbestos in an elementary school for quite some time. We have a solar panel contract that I don't think anybody can really figure out what has gone on with that. And if anybody knows, I'd like to hear. We've got a constant issue with underfunded retirement funds. That always comes up. We've got the high school annex that's got to come down. I mean, obviously that should have been a priority. That building is clearly an attractive nuisance, is what they call it in the legal industry. And of course that raises the insurance rates too. So we have to start having a philosophical discussion on what is it that we do need. And I think there are ways that, and again, this part doesn't need an answer today, but it does need an answer. I would ask maybe if the Board of Ed has any thoughts about consolidating buildings, maybe cleaning out storage for things that are never possibly going to be used. Because, and I say this for several reasons. One is we've got to be responsible. And two, even the handout for the Board of Education budget itself on page 5, there's a graph for the, and it says continual trend towards increased poverty. This is, we're not Gotham City or New York or whatever. I mean, this burden is shouldered by everybody who lives here. We're not going to grant right our way to fiscal responsibility. We're not going to line item transfer our way to fiscal responsibility. And at some point, we're going to run into a situation just like it was in 2017, where the rug was being pulled right out in front of us, and the then first selectman wrote a nice letter to all the property owners and said, could you pretty please pay your taxes in advance? We're 30 days from not making payroll. So we can all say and pat ourselves on the back, well, we did a good job because there hasn't been a net increase in spending, but what we should be doing is we should be decreasing spending. And there are ways to do that if we actually have that discussion on what should government do and what shouldn't do, and what should be a priority. Which I wouldn't say at all that, resurfacing a track is a priority if you have asbestos in an elementary school. Maybe that seems far-fetched, but I don't think it is. So, let me see. So yeah, basically, long story short is if we keep dealing with things suddenly and we don't think, say a few years down the road, we will continue to be back with line item transfer after line item transfer after line item transfer to the point where the budgets won't have any meaning.
Okay. Anyone else? Any members of the boards? Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I almost forgot something.
Yeah.
We have a real estate agent, I believe his name is Lyman. He's done a really good job moving those industrial lots. The thing that I'm a little worried about, since he's done so well for us and he's been such a good sport, is why we have Sussman Shapiro filing something like 32 plus some odd interrogatories in a tax appeal case. The docket number is WWMCD 26019-721. And just so everybody knows who's not familiar with this, those types of cases always settle. They always come to some consensus and agreement. And I can say for things that I cannot go into comment here, but I can say that particular firm has a bit of a tendency to fight pointlessly when things can be resolved. So I would ask everyone to look into that and, maybe work with Lyman a little bit to, see if we can't resolve this without, big discovery fight.
Okay, anyone else?
Oh, sorry,
Yes, Dan?
fireworks. I'm not sure what fireworks are doing in the budget. I kind of think, and everybody's generally aware, if they want to see fireworks, they're currently free and they go on all year.
Okay, thank you. Also, of course, any board members, everyone here being taxpayers, certainly, if you have anything that you'd like to raise up.
Mr. Chair, I would like to, I'll say Matt Radan, who's also Board of Finance alternate. I just want to reaffirm part of the Board of Ed budget here pertaining to the inclusion of funds under the 2% carryover, the $544,000 total. That numbers consisted of unexpended funds from this current year, meaning there is not a specific line item account that those funds are residing in. Those are going to be moved upon the conclusion of the fiscal year and held as unexpended funds eligible for carryover.
So those are from the funds last year, not this year. This year will go forward, and it only gets appropriated as the Board of Finance sees fit, and only after an audit. So these are from the prior year funds.
By prior year, you're referring to 1920?
2020, right, FY 2020.
Okay.
The FY 2021 would not come into play until the audit for FY 2021 is complete.
Okay.
You all set?
All set.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, we could entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll
a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Thank you all for coming out.